All right, I just want to make a quick video on how to design. I'm not going to go through how to design by showing you every single feature. I just want to very quickly go through the way I would design, say, a single unit restoration. All right, I think I have my cases in TR4, so I'm going to go and do that. Click on that server. We'll wait for it to load. All right, if you get this warning, it's fine. Just click OK. Same thing here, it doesn't matter, just hit OK. This is something super important that I should mention. If ever you get the setup wizard to come up, make sure you just go ahead and either go next through the whole thing without filling it out, or simply hit later, or literally just anything except going through and plugging in um, your, like plugging in a password here or changing the student username. Do not put in your name, do not put in a random password, please. Um, just, just keep hitting next or hit later. Please don't put in your information here. It'll lock everybody else out. Okay. So what we want to do is we always want to search for our patient or our box number. So the patient would be the ID number, or in our case, our box number. There we go. We can go and select it, and then all of the cases that we have sent to the server should be here. So we'll wait for them to load. In order for cases to show up under your patient chart, you first have to go into cases, search for your patient case, right click on the case, hit accept, and then the case will then be transferred to that server. In my case, it's TR4. And then it'll allow me to go into that chart and modify the lab slip. And then you would change the case from LLUSD design to in-house. I'm going to go ahead, after doing that, go right into design. So I'm going to click on this anatomy design button. All right, so the first thing that comes up is the margin line. It will show up like this. It'll ask us basically to set the margin line. I'm using right now a mouse, and I'm going to right click to rotate and then left click on the margin, or excuse me, on the finish line, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and left click on the finish line, and then it's automatically going to set it up everywhere else. I'm going to use a scroll wheel. I'm going to actually click on the scroll wheel to kind of like drag it up and down, left or right as needed. And then you'll see that as I move my mouse over, you'll actually see this like snap, right? So you can kind of see it in this like lighter green. That's the proposal. So basically, if I move it over slightly, and let's say that's where I want my finish line to be, I'm going to go to move it over slightly, and then when I left click, it'll actually snap it over. So I'll left click, and then it moves it. Let's see if I can do that anywhere else. I like to move this around a bunch to really show me where my to get a better idea of like where my finish line is supposed to be. So you can kind of see right here, it probably should be further out. And by moving it over, I'm gonna say yes. I think it does belong a little further out. I like to look at this in different colors as well. So I like to look at this in both monochrome and in color. I find it helpful. I'm mostly doing most of this in monochrome, but the color does help. If you take HD photos, this becomes even easier. Sometimes the software, what it does is it kind of stitches things a little weird, especially if you have moisture near your finish line, or if you have like a cord that kind of creeps up near the finish line. It'll actually start to blend data together. It makes it nice. It makes it kind of soft instead of nice and sharp like it's supposed to be. It'll kind of soften things up. So you kind of want to be mindful of things like that. So yeah, a good HD photo is always helpful to kind of help you determine whether or not something's actually a finish line or cord or something else. through the magic of editing, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of finish this a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next step. One thing I want to mention too is the size of that snapping. You can see that when I increase the size, it makes this line a little larger. If I decrease the size, then you can kind of see the line becomes a little bit smaller. The proposed change becomes smaller. Okay, now to the next step. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here for the following tooth, just because I selected 2 teeth in the lab slip, this case setup being our lab slip. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Again, I'll speed through this. Okay, so the insertion direction is quite nice here. It's going to automatically set up the insertion direction for us. It's going to choose the best path of insertion. So that's quite nice. I usually don't touch this. It usually does a pretty good job. The way to tell whether or not you have a good path of insertion is you really shouldn't see too much color on two parallel walls, right? Or two opposing walls, I should say, excuse me. So you can see on the mesial here, I have about a 0.03 millimeter undercut there. And if I look at the distal, I think at worst, maybe about a 0.5. It's about a 0.5, so it's not, 0.06, excuse me. So it's not terrible. It's about our cement spacing, so that's not terribly bad. But I could improve on this a little bit. You can kind of see it kind of bevels a little bit, kind of dips in, so that's where my undercut would be. And then the same thing here. I mean, it shows that there's a little bit of a undercut here on the lingual side, but not so much on the facial side. So what that means is we could actually change the insertion direction to be a little bit more lingual. So we can hit from view if we needed to. You can see that it'll go ahead and change and remove some of the undercut from the lingual side. And now we're pretty good there. But I also kind of messed this up a little bit. You can kind of see I added a bunch of undercut now here on the distal. So we can mess around with it if we need to, but usually it does a pretty good job of doing it on its own. So we're gonna go ahead and hit next, and then we'll do the same thing for number 9. Same thing going on here. I can probably do a little bit of a better job there, but that's okay. All right, so designing is quite nice here. You can see the software automatically created a design for both number 7 and 9. They are pretty terrible. The software does sometimes it'll do a decent job in designing and giving us a pretty rough, pretty decent rough sketch, but sometimes it does something wacky like this. So pretty long in the tooth here. The first thing that I like to do is essentially just copy the contralateral anatomy. So we can see we have 7 here. I'm going to go ahead and copy number 10. So what I do is I click on this copy tool, and the first thing I'm doing is simply just clicking on the incisal edge of this number 10. You're going to see it's going to drop a line around that tooth. You can fix that line if you need to. Sometimes it'll kind of like create like an error if this line passes through something like this where let's see if I can kind of show you that way I can fix it if we need to. Yeah, perfect. So you can kind of see it's perfectly around the whole tooth, the cervical aspect of the tooth. The software does not like this. What it wants us to do is actually wants us to go up and around this contact point. So we want it to look like this, something along those lines, and that's pretty good. That's what the software wants. I don't know why, but that's the way it likes it. So we'll go ahead and do that. Once we do that, we can see it actually does a better job. So it's not super long anymore. We have to hit this little play button to apply. So we do that. And then now we can click on number 9 and then do the same thing here. So we click on the incisal edge, just like that. It's going to go ahead and copy over the anatomy. Very cool. And then now the next thing that I like to do is essentially just transform. Oh, that was my bad. I forgot to click on apply. No worries there. There we go. So, okay, so now we're going to go into this transform tool. This is quite nice. What I like to do is basically just make gross adjustments here. So I want to make this look not perfect, but about 90% roughly. So I'm going to make most of my changes here. You can see this like light red is essentially the software telling us that we don't have enough thickness both on the buccal and lingual. That's fine. So don't worry about that for now. I'd say just make most of your changes. So we can kind of see we want to add some of that contact there. That looks pretty good. The arch has this nice bow, right? So that's what I'm looking at. I want to see if this tooth is, in line with that. And we can either pull and like rotate things if we need to. I think it was already pretty good, so just kind of leave it like that. I'm gonna add a little bit of bulk actually on the buccal by pulling on the buccal here, and then same thing on the lingual as well. If we want to add more bulk on the cervical side, we can do that by essentially pulling on this yellow ball. We could do the same thing on the incisal side if we need to. Let's go ahead and pull here. I have a little bit of a belly, so I can actually push this in a little bit. We're going to go ahead and pull on the buccal here just a tad. There we go. And then now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for 7. Seven does need to be rotated a little bit, so you can see that here. That looks pretty good. You see my height's off a little bit. I can actually pull down the tooth if I need to here. So that's looking pretty good. Sometimes I'll actually pull the teeth and I'll kind of line it up with the edge of the screen to kind of see if things are symmetrical. Don't have to get this perfect, but something I like to do. So this could come down maybe a tiny bit more. I think the height of this guy is pretty good, pretty spot on. So kind of pull this down a little bit. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. I think we're just about there. Now what I want to do is I want to look at the contralateral anatomy and kind of see if it matches over with, oh, actually I should add some contact there. That looks pretty good. You can see it's still missing a little bit of contact there. There's actually a automate button. So we can click on this one here. Excuse me, we can click on contacts here and then hit this apply to enforce a 0.02 contact. So that's pretty good. So you can kind of see it'll actually add contact here, and then we could show a distance map to let us know if we have good contact. If it's hard to see, you can actually get rid of the rest of the arch and then just show our crown anatomy, which is quite nice. I don't like to completely hollow it out. Like I don't like to completely make it solid. So I like to look at it kind of in between so I can still see my prep a little bit. And now you can kind of see that I can see through the teeth. And that's kind of how I like to look at stuff. So you can see that we have this 0.02 Let's go ahead and see if we have the same thing going on for 7. We don't. We have 0.11 and 0.9, so we're going to go ahead and hit apply here for 7. Now once we've done that, what I want to do is I want to look at the anatomy of 7, and I want to see if it matches up well with number 10. You can kind of see that the anatomy for 7, actually let's make this a little bit, let's make the arch a little more solid here. There we go. We can see that 7 kind of like bevels in a little bit, just like this, kind of dips in. And if we look at 10, it doesn't do that. This is nice and round, where this one looks kind of concaved a little bit. So we kind of want to fix that. So what I would do at this point is use either my wax knife or my morph tool. So morphing's pretty nice. What I like to do is essentially use this like circle. This is what this is what it's going to change. So it's kind of big. I don't need to make that big of a change. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little smaller. Go back to that area. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then now I can go ahead and pull on this to kind of add some bulk here. So you can see that. And then now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to, say, my wax knife. I can go ahead. This is somewhat similar. The add is going to go ahead and add material. So they're kind of the same. They work very similarly. Either is fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use smooth at this point, and you can kind of see how it kind of pimples out a little bit, kind of bulges out. I'm going to go ahead and smooth it, and it's going to go ahead and kind of smoothen everything out. So I'm just left clicking and holding here, and you can kind of see that's looking a lot better. All right, I like it. All right, so I think now we're pretty good. What I want to talk about now is essentially just this like minimum thickness that's going on here. So the software is telling us that we don't have enough thickness. You can actually correct it. So if I hit correct though, it may overly bulge this out. So we can hit correct, and you can see how it's going to add some bulk to that. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but this is going to be a chunkier tooth, right? So sometimes we like to choose the better of two evils, right? So I would say, I would probably want something that's not super duper thin, but something that's not too thick where the patient might not like. So it's I think we might get like different schools of thought there, but that's kind of my opinion on it. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it. This is what I'm doing. Again, I'm essentially just copying the tooth using this tool first, and then I'm going through this transform tool, and then using morph, and then this wax knife, kind of in that order. Specifically, and you can kind of see in like the period of like 5 minutes at most, I was able to get a pretty good design on 2 teeth. So I'd say give that a try, and if you have any questions, let me know.